My name is Melody Worthington. I'm the executive director at the Tobacco Farm Life Museum, located in Kinley, North Carolina. We're just a mile off of I-95 and easy to locate when you're in the area. So I do again want to thank the board of directors, our staff, our sponsors, and also our volunteers. All of you guys are important to us. You're what makes us who we are, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you for being a part of us. The museum's mission, like I said earlier, we've been here for 37 years, and our mission is to preserve and present the history of the rural farming community in eastern North Carolina. So we thank you for allowing us to continue that mission for 37 years, and it's a real privilege. So as we go through today, what we're doing is we're looking at clips through time. We're taking newspaper articles, firsthand accounts, visitors' responses, and we're talking about how life was. We're trying to get a glimpse inside rural life in eastern North Carolina between 1880 and 1950 is generally what we say we interpret. So we're just trying to get some snippets and kind of understand the lifestyle and how it's changed. We'll be addressing some topics. Last week we looked at fire trucks and first responders as far as barn fires and field fires. So, and Kinley getting its first fire truck. So that was kind of exciting. If you want to look at that video is up on our Facebook page. So the teaser that was put up for this week's broadcast was what do crescent moons, corn cobs, and the Sears catalog from 1900s have in common. And if any of you guys lived through this, the use of these, then you would know it's outhouses. We get a lot of comments from visitors who come through who request to know more about the outhouses and what's on site. So, and it's just a fun topic. It's something different from how we live today. So the Brown homestead that we have on site, which was relocated from Micro, North Carolina, just about 10 miles up the road from Kinley, not far. It consists of an original homestead, which is a 2-room house from about 1890. And then in about 1910, they built a 4-room house. So we have 2 houses that consist of the homestead. The original house is now the kitchen, and then they have the main house. Neither one of those have bathrooms, of course. But when they were relocated to Kinley, the donor had requested that an outhouse not be placed with the homestead because the family never had an outhouse. So we are looking at a homestead that was lived in until about 1960 that never had an outhouse. So, also in consideration to that, we need to think about where it was located. So it was moved from Micro, but it was located right next to the railroad track. So in thinking about that, from what I understand, the house was on one side of the railroad tracks and their fields were on the other side of the railroad tracks. And what they did was they would use the woods in the back for their restrooms. So that's just something to think about as we look into outhouses. We do have an outhouse on the grounds, and it's located with our 1-room schoolhouse. So you can come out and visit that 1-room schoolhouse whenever we open back up. But what is interesting is that the family didn't get running water until about the 1930s, the late 1930s. And running water didn't make it into the houses until electricity came through the area. Now, also in thinking about the railroad track, some of the first houses in the area that got electricity or running water were close to the railroad tracks, just because of accessibility. But then electricity came in the 1930s, but telephone lines were accessible in Kinley as early as 1902. And I know that from Mr. Bob Boyette's Reflections book, which is one of the resources I'm looking at. And Mr. Boyette published articles based on the Town of Kinley Commissioners meetings from the early 1900s. So from 1907 to 1915. And in his notes, he mentions that in the June meeting of 1911, a new ordinance was passed requiring all residents to have back doors on their privies, so fitted as to prevent as much as possible the accumulation of and rising of the flies, and so hinged so it may be raised for proper cleaning. Failure to comply upon conviction was a $5 fine. And then in his June 1982 article, he mentions that in 1912, Mr. Asmil White was employed in April to clean all water closets at a rate of $20 per week. He had to keep a list of all of the privies to be cleaned. So I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd want that job. But what that indicates from the town council meetings is that the outhouses weren't just located with the country homes, they were located in towns. And as we saw, that our farmstead house did not have an outhouse. So that's interesting because I usually associate outhouses with farms. But what I learned there was that the outhouses were also in towns, which makes sense. And we know they had to be maintained, and we also know that about that time, about 1911, 1912, the town was really starting to consider trash pickup and having clean streets and a clean environment for their residents. So that's important to note as well. So in the Sharecroppers books, Memories by Roy Taylor, he, in an almost romantical method, opens up his chapter on vines growing on the outhouses. But he mentions that there must have been some form of status symbol associated with the privies of those days, for they weren't all built alike. It seemed that the higher up the ladder of family standing was in the community, the better the privy. And privies in those days were not professionally built and moved to the side. A deluxe model was 3-seaters with hinged tops that could be raised and lowered and doors that hooked. But these were rare indeed, and all of them were built over pits. They were at the better houses too, but even they were supplied with newspapers and discarded catalogs, for toilet paper was non-existent in the rural areas. Next down the ladder was the 2-seater, also with a door, and this was the most popular privy of the late 1920s and 30s. It was equipped with a stumpy broom used for tidying up the tiny structures, and there were no tops for their seats. Last was the back house, that never had a door, only the place cut out where the door should be. The toe sack serving a place for the door. They were attached to nails driven to each side of the cutout, and a lot of this type had either a pasteboard box or a nail keg on the floor where hens went to lay. Many a baby chick saw its first light of day in rural North Carolina back houses. And this kind usually just sat on top of the ground. And then he mentions another word on the privies, in addition to their smells. Another word about those privies. In general, they were considered to be the woman's domain, and many of the men left their use up to the female gender. I never knew whether this was early signs of male chauvinism or whether men felt it a little below their dignity to use facilities that they felt reflected on their manhood. I just know that's the way it was. So it was a way of life, but it also, was for the gentle sex, I guess. But that's sharecroppers, Roy Taylor's memories. So then I found in Farm Heritage and Humor and Memories of Gold Valley by Mr. Bruce Woodard just some more lighthearted stuff about the outhouses. He notes that his daddy built the outhouse in 1924. And I should probably mention that the outhouse at the museum is a two-seater as well. So Daddy built the outhouse in 1924 when our home was built. He dug a hole about 10 feet deep and built the outhouse over it. It was a two-holer in case of emergency, and the outhouse was occupied. You prayed that you knew the person inside well enough to be able to use the spare hole. If so, they could unsnap the hook on the inside to open the door for you. Fortunately, this situation seldom occurred. The outhouse stood in its same location for many years. Odors and flies were controlled by putting hydrated lime in the hole occasionally. Mail order shopping was popular in those days. Transportation was limited, so some shopping could be done by catalog. Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Ward catalogs were good for reasons other than shopping, however. They made good reading, and they were the forerunners of Charmin, White Cloud, Kelsey, and Cottonelle. We couldn't afford regular bathroom tissue, and a few corn cobs were kept in a little box in the corner for emergency. After electricity came through the community in the early 1940s, indoor bathrooms became a reality. Okay, so indoor bathrooms became a reality. It was about that time that mail order shipping began to decline. Marketing experts probably charged Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Ward over millions of dollars to identify the reason for the sharp decline. I understand they never figured it out, but my brothers and I did. The advent of indoor plumbing took the catalogs off the bathroom reading list. When people stopped looking at catalogs, they stopped ordering. So mail order shopping was flushed down by indoor plumbing. So there you have it. That's what the 1900 Sears catalog and the corn cob have to do with outhouses. But it's a little less clear on the moon and its association with the outhouses. Some say it's to let light in. Some say it's to identify the toilet as the females. Just a little more unclear. But the moon has been long associated with the outhouse. We want to hear more from you. And we would love to hear your thoughts, to hear some of your memories and your ideas for future posts. So we hope that you will keep in touch with us. We thank you for being here. We do have some of these books on sale in our gift shop. We hope that you will visit our online gift shop. And we do hope that you will come out and visit us when we open. We hope that you stay safe. And if we can help you with anything, just let us know. Have a great weekend. Thank you for being here with us. Bye.